Hello, everyone. It's so good to have you here. You know, there are stories in life you never think you'll live through, and mine is one of them. It's so personal, so intimate, that sometimes I feel like I'm reliving it all over again, just thinking about telling it. But I have to tell it. I need you to understand what happened to my sister and me, Erica and Sophie, two 19-year-old girls who suddenly found themselves in the middle of a nightmare we couldn't have imagined even in our worst dreams. We were on our way to the meeting about our parents' large inheritance. As we got into the car, a homeless man stopped us and, well, let me start from the beginning, from the way everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day that should have been ordinary, but which became the landmark for everything that followed. The sun streamed through the windows of our mansion in Fairview, California, painting the walls with a golden hue that seemed to mock the darkness within us. It had been 3 months since we lost our parents, Richard and Catherine Hayes, in a car accident that the police called tragic and inexplicable. Inexplicable was the word that echoed in my head, an open wound that refused to heal. They were multimillionaires, well-known figures in philanthropy and business, and the idea that a simple accident could take their lives so abruptly seemed wrong. Sophie, my twin sister and my mirror in the world, felt the same. Our bonds were more than just genetic. We were two halves of the same soul, and one's pain was the other's, multiplied. That day, the silence in the house was almost deafening. Before, it buzzed with our parents' lives, their laughter, the meetings, the hustle and bustle of the staff who took care of everything. Now, only the two of us remained, and a reduced team, who seemed to walk on tiptoes, as if afraid of breaking the fragile bubble of grief that enveloped us. The only one who remained constant, a rock amidst the chaos, was Charles Ramson, our longtime security guard and driver. Charles was more than an employee. He was part of the family, a man of few words but unwavering loyalty. He had known us since we were children, drove us to school, to parties, and was always there, a protective shadow. The call from the law firm came promptly at 9 in the morning. The lawyer's voice, Ms. Davies, was polite, but with a professional coldness that gave me chills. "Girls, we are ready to proceed with the liquidation of your parents' estate. Can you be here at 2 in the afternoon?" Sophie and I exchanged glances. It was the moment we had both anticipated and dreaded. Closing that chapter was a necessity, but it also meant accepting the finality of our loss. We agreed, of course. We needed to move forward, or at least try. I chose a navy blue dress that Dad always said brought out my eyes, the same one he gave me for my 18th birthday. Sophie opted for something similar, a reflection of our shared taste and our way of supporting each other, even in the most mundane choices. As I clasped the pearl necklace Mom gave me, I saw my reflection in the bedroom mirror. The girl staring back at me looked older, more fragile than I remembered. 3 months of grieving had etched new lines around my eyes, and my reddish-brown hair had more silver strands than I cared to admit. Sophie, beside me, looked like a paler, darker version of herself, her youthful vitality replaced by a deep melancholy. The drive downtown took longer than expected. Traffic was heavier than usual, and I found myself nervously tapping my fingers on the steering wheel. Sophie was beside me, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery. But her mind, I knew, was far away. We weren't sure why we felt so anxious. This was supposed to be straightforward. Our parents had always been transparent about their plans, and we knew everything would be left to us, with provisions for the future. We parked in the underground parking garage of the law firm's building. The concrete walls seemed cold and inhospitable, and a shiver ran down my spine. My hands trembled slightly as I turned off the engine. We grabbed our purses and the document folder they asked us to bring, took a deep breath, and headed for the elevator. That's when we heard the voice. "Ladies, wait!" We turned to see a man approaching from behind one of the concrete pillars. He must have been in his mid-50s, wearing clothes that had seen better days. A worn jacket, faded jeans, scuffed boots. His hair was disheveled, and he had the air of someone who spent a lot of time outdoors. Our first instinct was to keep walking, maybe even run. Dad always warned us about being alone in parking lots, but something in his eyes stopped us. They weren't threatening or wild. They were concerned, almost desperate. "Please, ladies, I need to tell you something important," he said, maintaining a respectful distance. "You're the Hayes sisters, right? Richard and Catherine's daughters?" My heart began to pound. How did this stranger know our names? Know about our parents? "We don't know who you are, but we need you to leave us alone," I said, trying to keep my voice firm as I reached for my phone. Sophie, beside me, was tense, her hand already on my arm. Charles was already moving towards the man. "Ladies, please. I know how this looks, but I used to work for Morrison and Associates upstairs. I was fired 3 weeks ago, but before they let me go, I heard things. Things about your parents' will." We froze. Morrison and Associates was our parents' law firm, the same firm we were about to meet with. The man looked around nervously, as if checking if we weren't being watched. "Your grandmother, Eleanor, has been in contact with certain people at the firm. There are documents, things she had prepared." My mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" Sophie asked, her voice a whisper. "I can't prove it yet, but I think she's planning to alter your parents' will. She's been telling people that you're not mentally fit to handle the estate. She has medical records, statements from people claiming you've been acting confused, forgetful." The words hit us like a physical blow. I clutched the side of the car for support. "That's impossible. We've never been diagnosed with anything. We're perfectly fine. I know, young ladies. That's why I'm waiting here, hoping to catch you before the meeting. She didn't expect you to show up today. She told Mr. Morrison you probably wouldn't even remember the appointment." My anger flared, overriding my fear. How dare she? How dare anyone question our mental state? The man nodded sympathetically. "There's more, ladies. She's been forging documents, making it look like your parents wanted to change their will in their final weeks. She has fake medical reports saying they were concerned about your ability to manage finances." I felt like I was drowning. None of this made sense. Our parents had never expressed any concern about our ability to manage money. If anything, it was us who, even young, were always learning about the family business and had a solid understanding. "Why are you telling us this?" I asked, studying his face for any sign of deception. "Because I liked your parents, ladies. They were always kind to me when they came to the office. And because what they're doing isn't right. I may not have much, but I still have my conscience." I looked at that stranger, that homeless man who was risking the little he had left to warn us. "What's your name?" "Arthur, ladies. Arthur Jenkins. I was a paralegal at Morrison and Associates for 12 years before they decided I knew too much about their side dealings." "Side dealings?" Arthur looked around again. "They've been helping certain clients manipulate wills and estates, charging high fees to make inconvenient family members disappear from inheritance documents. Your grandmother has been paying them very well." The elevator chimed in the distance and Arthur recoiled. "Ladies, you need to be very careful in there. They're expecting you to know nothing." He gave us one last warning look, his eyes full of genuine concern, and then turned, disappearing quickly into the dimness of the parking garage. We stood there, paralyzed, Arthur's words echoing in our ears. Grandmother. Our sweet, loving Grandma Eleanor, the woman who hugged and comforted us after our parents' death, was the mastermind behind all this? The idea was so monstrous, so unthinkable, that it seemed like a nightmare. But the urgency in Arthur's eyes, the way he approached us, it all felt too real to ignore. Sophie squeezed my hand, her fingers cold. I knew she was feeling the same confusion, the same mix of fear and disbelief. The meeting awaiting us upstairs wasn't just about our parents' inheritance, it was about our own sanity, our truth, and perhaps our survival. What awaited us in Morrison and Associates' office was now a terrifying unknown, and we had to go in there with our eyes wide open, ready to face whatever Grandma Eleanor and her accomplices had prepared for us. The elevator door opened with a soft hiss, revealing the luxurious lobby of Morrison and Associates' office. The polished marble and soft lighting contrasted brutally with the darkness and fear Arthur had planted in our hearts. Sophie and I exchanged a quick glance, a silent communication that said, "We're in this together." The receptionist, an impeccably dressed woman with a professional smile, greeted us. "Erica and Sophie Hayes, Ms. Davies is waiting for you in the conference room." And Miss Eleanor, too. The mention of Grandma Eleanor's name made my stomach churn. She was already there. This wasn't an inheritance meeting. It was a trap. We entered the room, and there she was, sitting at the head of the large mahogany table, with Ms. Davies and another lawyer we'd never seen. Grandma Eleanor, with her perfectly coiffed silver hair and silk dress, looked like the personification of benevolence. She stood up, opened her arms, and greeted us with a tight hug that suddenly felt suffocating. "My darlings, so glad you came. I was so worried that grief would still prevent you from dealing with these formalities." Her eyes, which once seemed full of affection, now seemed to scan us, searching for any sign of weakness, of confusion. Ms. Davies, a woman with an austere face and thin glasses, gestured to our seats. "Please sit down. Shall we begin?" The meeting was a blur of legal terms, clauses, and numbers that seemed to dance before my eyes. I tried to pay attention, but every word from Ms. Davies was filtered through the suspicion Arthur had sown. Grandma Eleanor intervened occasionally, always with an overly concerned tone. "Did you understand, my dears? Don't worry if it's too much to take in at once. I can take care of everything for you, as I always have." She looked at the lawyers, who nodded with complacent expressions. It was as if we were in a play, and we were the only ones who didn't know the script. At one point, Ms. Davies began talking about the provisional management of assets, citing a clause that, according to her, allowed a guardian to be appointed in case of temporary or emotional incapacity of the heirs. My blood ran cold. It was exactly what Arthur had said. Sophie, beside me, squeezed my hand under the table, a silent signal that she too had realized the trap. "Incapacity?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but feeling anger bubbling up. "We are not incapacitated. We are grieving, yes, but perfectly capable of managing our own affairs." Grandma Eleanor sighed dramatically. "Oh, my sweet girls. It's understandable that you feel that way. But the truth is, the shock of losing Richard and Catherine, and the way it all happened, it's been too much for you. I've seen how distracted you've been, how forgetful. Even Dr. Evans, the family doctor, expressed concern." "Dr. Evans?" He was an old family friend, a kind doctor who visited us occasionally to check in on us. I remembered one of his last visits when he asked us some strange questions about our sleep habits and our concentration. At the time, I thought it was just a friend's concern. Now it seemed like a disguised interrogation. "Dr. Evans visited us as friends, Grandma," Sophie retorted, her voice firmer than mine. "He never diagnosed us with any illness. Where did this come from now?" Mrs. Davies cleared her throat. "With all due respect, Miss Hayes, we have some reports that suggest otherwise. Statements from household staff, for example, who have noted a decline in your ability to concentrate and make decisions." My heart pounded. Were they using our own employees against us? Those who saw us every day, who were supposed to support us? The betrayal ran deep. I looked at Grandma Eleanor, and for an instant, I saw a cold glint in her eyes, an almost imperceptible satisfaction before she returned to her mask of concern. Later that day, back at the mansion, the air felt heavier than ever. Grandma Eleanor's presence, who had insisted on spending time with her dear granddaughters and moved into the guest room, was suffocating. She was everywhere, overseeing meals, asking about our plans, and even helping to organize our parents' papers. Every gesture from her, once seen as affection, now felt like an invasion, a form of control. "I can't believe this, Erica," Sophie said, as we locked ourselves in my room. "She's watching us. And Dr. Evans? And the employees? This is insane." "I know, Soph. But Arthur was right. She's planning something. We need to talk to Charles." Charles Ramson had been a constant figure in our lives, and I trusted him implicitly. He had been our parents' driver for over 20 years, and his serious face hid a loyal heart. However, in recent days, his presence had become more discreet. He seemed to avoid our gazes, and his answers were short and evasive. That night, after Grandma Eleanor had retired, we crept down to the kitchen, where Charles usually finished his shift. He was sitting at the table, drinking a cup of coffee, his gaze lost. "Charles, I called softly. He startled, almost knocking over his cup. Girls! What are you doing awake at this hour? His voice was more strained than usual. We need to talk to you, Sophie said, getting straight to the point. About Grandma Eleanor, and about what Arthur told us today. Charles's face paled. He looked around, as if the walls had ears. Arthur? You saw Arthur Jenkins? Yes, I confirmed. He warned us that Grandma is trying to declare us incompetent, and that she has falsified documents. He even said she's been talking to our parents' lawyers. Charles sighed, running a hand over his tired face. I knew this would happen. I tried to warn your parents, but they never listened to me. They trusted Eleanor too much. What do you mean, Charles? Sophie asked, sensing the gravity in his voice. Eleanor never liked your mother, Catherine. She always thought Catherine wasn't good enough for Richard, that she was a gold digger. And when your parents decided that you would be the sole heirs, Eleanor was furious. She always wanted control of the Hayes empire. But what about the accident? I asked, my voice choked. Was it really an accident? Charles hesitated, his eyes meeting ours. I don't know, girls, but I know Eleanor is capable of anything. She's a dangerous woman. I've seen things, heard things. She has a dark side that no one knows. He paused, and his voice dropped to a whisper. She tried to sabotage your parents' business before, years ago. Richard forgave her, but I never trusted her. Charles's revelation was an even greater shock than Arthur's warning. Grandma Eleanor was not just a manipulator, but someone with a history of malice. The idea that she could have had something to do with our parents' death was a terrifying thought, but one that fit the strange feeling that something was terribly wrong. What can we do, Charles? Sophie asked, desperate. She's closing in on us. I don't know, girls, he replied with deep sadness. She has eyes and ears everywhere. She's already asked me questions about you, about your habits, about how you've been coping with grief. She's building a case against you. He shook his head. I can't do much now. She's put me under surveillance. If I try to help you openly, she'll fire me. And without me, you'll be alone. The conversation with Charles left us with a mix of relief and despair. Relief that we had confirmation of our suspicions, and despair that we were so cornered. Grandma Eleanor, with her facade of a loving grandmother, was weaving a web of lies and manipulation around us. And with each passing day, the noose tightened. The dark night outside seemed to reflect the darkness settling in our own home. I knew we had to act, but the feeling of powerlessness was overwhelming. How could two 19-year-old girls fight against a ruthless grandmother and a corrupt law firm? The answer seemed distant, but the urgency was palpable. We needed to find a way to expose her, before she stole not only our inheritance, but our very identity. If you've ever felt trapped in a situation where the truth seemed distorted and the people you trusted turned out to be different, I understand perfectly. This story is deeply personal to me, and every detail still haunts me. If you're following along and feeling this connection, please tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story has reached and feel a bit of your company. It's a comfort to know I'm not alone on this journey. The days that followed the conversation with Charles were a silent torture. The mansion, once a sanctuary, became a gilded cage. Grandma Eleanor was everywhere, her presence constant and invasive. She organized our schedules, suggested therapeutic activities that kept us busy and under her supervision, and even selected our clothes, claiming we needed a more suitable look for our delicate state. It was as if we were being prepared for a role we didn't want to play, that of fragile, incapable young heiresses. At every meal, she watched us, asking seemingly innocent questions about our dreams, our fears, our ability to remember details. I recall one particular morning when she asked us about the color of our parents' car. It was a dark blue, wasn't it, my dears? Or perhaps black. Do you remember well? I knew it was blue, a deep metallic blue that Dad loved. But the way she asked, with a tone of doubt, made me hesitate for a second. Sophie shot me a warning glance, and I replied firmly, "It was blue, Grandma, a midnight blue." She just smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Our social life was drastically reduced. Grandma Eleanor intercepted our calls, answered messages from friends, claiming we were too distraught for social interactions. Our friends, accustomed to our independence, began to drift away, thinking we were isolating ourselves due to grief. It was a subtle but effective strategy to isolate us and make us even more dependent on her. "I can't take it anymore, Erica," Sophie confided one night, as we were getting ready for bed. "I feel like I'm going crazy. She's everywhere. I can't breathe." "I know, Soph," I replied, hugging her. "But we need to be strong. We need to find a way to fight." Our only hope was Charles. We tried to communicate with him in secret, through notes left in hidden places, or quick whispers when Grandma Eleanor wasn't around. He informed us about her movements, about the calls she made to the law firm, and about the unexpected visits from Dr. Evans, who now seemed like a disguised spy. "Eleanor is pressuring Dr. Evans to sign more reports," Charles wrote to us in a note hidden under a potted plant, "saying that you are having memory crises and episodes of confusion. He seems reluctant, but she is very persuasive." The idea that Dr. Evans, a man we had known since childhood, could be forced to lie about our mental health was revolting, but Grandma Eleanor's influence seemed limitless. One day, Grandma Eleanor announced that we would be taking a relaxing trip to one of our summer properties in Martha's Vineyard. "It will be good for you to breathe new air, my dears, away from all these painful memories." It seemed like a kind offer, but by this point, every suggestion from her was met with suspicion. It was a way to get us out of the city, to distance us from anyone who could help us. On the morning of our departure, as Charles loaded our bags into the car, Grandma Eleanor was on the phone, speaking in a low voice. Suddenly, she turned to him, with an expression of false sadness. "Charles, dear, I have terrible news. The law firm informed me that due to the estate's restructuring, your services will no longer be needed. I'm so sorry." My heart sank. Sophie and I exchanged glances, our eyes wide with shock. Charles, our loyal protector, was being fired. It was the loss of our last ally within the house, the emotional rupture we feared. Charles, visibly shaken but maintaining his composure, simply nodded. "I understand, Mrs. Eleanor. It has been an honor to serve the Hayes family for so many years." He gave us a quick look, a look of apology and helplessness, before walking away to his car, which was already being loaded with his belongings. "No, Grandma, you can't do this," I exclaimed, feeling tears in my eyes. "Charles is family. He's been with us our whole lives." "My dear, I know it's difficult," she said, placing her hand on my shoulder, a touch that now felt icy to me. "But these are necessary decisions for the efficient management of the estate. Charles is a good man, but we need a more specialized team now. Don't worry, he will receive good compensation." Charles's dismissal was a devastating blow. He was our compass, our link to the truth. Without him, we were completely at the mercy of Grandma Eleanor. The trip to Martha's Vineyard, which once seemed like a prison, now felt like an exile. In the car, as we drove away from the mansion that was once our safe home, Sophie and I cried in silence. The landscape blurred through our tears. I remembered a day when we were children, and Dad took us for a boat ride on the lake near our summer house. "Erica, Sophie," he said with a warm smile, "no matter what happens, you will always have each other, and you will always have Mom and me. We are a team." The memory was a painful contrast to our current reality. We were together, yes, but the team was broken, and the security he promised seemed to have evaporated. "What are we going to do now, Erica?" Sophie whispered, her voice broken. "We're alone." "No, Soph," I said, wiping away my own tears and trying to find a strength I didn't feel. "We're not alone. We have each other. And Charles gave us a warning. He gave us something to start with." Despite the pain, a new determination began to grow within me. Grandma Eleanor had underestimated our resilience, our ability to fight. She thought that by isolating us, she would make us easier to control. But, by firing Charles, she had cut the last bridge to our passivity. Now, we had nothing to lose. We arrived at the summer house in Martha's Vineyard. It was a beautiful house, with ocean views, but the beauty was overshadowed by the feeling of being trapped. Grandma Eleanor gave us a tour, pointing out every detail as if she were the rightful owner. "This house has always been my favorite," she commented, with a glint in her eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. That night, as we tried to sleep in separate rooms, a new imposition from Grandma to encourage our independence, I couldn't stop thinking about Charles's words. "She is capable of anything." What if our parents' accident hadn't been an accident? The idea was horrible, but with each passing day, Grandma Eleanor's mask of benevolence crumbled, revealing a calculating coldness. I got up, went to the window, and looked out at the dark ocean. The waves crashed against the shore with a monotonous, almost hypnotic sound. I remembered a conversation with Mom, shortly before she and Dad left for that last trip. "Erica, dear," she said, holding my hand, "always be strong. And never trust someone who tries to make you doubt your own mind." Her words echoed in my head, a premonition, a warning. I knew we needed to find something, irrefutable proof that would expose Grandma Eleanor. Something our parents might have left for us, a last resort, a secret message. But where to look? And how, with Grandma Eleanor watching our every move? The sense of urgency was overwhelming. I had to act, but I had no idea what she had prepared for us that night, or in the days to come. The web was tightening, and time was running out. Life in Martha's Vineyard under Grandma Eleanor's surveillance was a constant game of cat and mouse. Every conversation, every movement was calculated. She forced us to participate in therapy sessions with a local psychiatrist, a Dr. Albright, who seemed more interested in recording our responses than in helping us. He asked leading questions, trying to get us to admit confusion or emotional instability. Sophie and I developed a system of subtle glances and gestures to communicate, to warn each other about the traps. "He's trying to make us look crazy, Erica," Sophie whispered to me one night, when Grandma Eleanor was in her room. "He wants us to say we're seeing things, that we're forgetting things." "I know, Soph, but we're not going to give her what she wants. We're going to be smarter." Our only hope was to find something our parents might have left for us. They were meticulous people who thought of everything. It wasn't possible that they hadn't foreseen the possibility of something going wrong, especially with Grandma Eleanor's history and her greed. We started searching in secret, rummaging through our parents' belongings when Grandma Eleanor was sleeping or busy on a call. We went through Dad's office at the mansion, but she had already organized everything. Now, in Martha's Vineyard, we had a new chance. The summer house was a place full of memories, a refuge where our parents kept more personal, less formal things. One afternoon, while Grandma Eleanor was on one of her long phone calls, we decided to explore Mom's small art studio, a place she loved and where she spent hours painting. It was a room full of canvases, paints, and brushes, and the smell of oil and turpentine brought a wave of nostalgia. Sophie was examining a bookshelf of art books, while I looked behind some large canvases. "Erica, look at this," Sophie said, her voice an urgent whisper. She was holding a hardcover book, an old photo album that belonged to Mom. But it wasn't the album itself that caught our attention, but something hidden behind it. There was a small cavity in the wall, carefully disguised. My heart started pounding. With trembling hands, I reached into the cavity and felt something metallic. I pulled out a small, dark wooden box with an antique clasp. Our eyes met, filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Could this be it? We went back to my room, locked the door, and opened the box. Inside, there was a sealed envelope, a small digital recorder, and a set of keys. The envelope was addressed to "My beloved daughters, Erica and Sophie," in Mom's elegant handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside, there was a letter, dated just 1 week before the accident. "My dearest Erica and Sophie," the letter began, and Mom's voice seemed to echo in my mind. "If you are reading this, it means our greatest fears have come true. Your father and I always knew that Grandma Eleanor's ambition had no limits. She never accepted that you would be our only heirs. She always wanted control of everything we built." Tears streamed down my face as I read. Sophie was beside me, reading over my shoulder. Her breath caught. "In recent months," the letter continued, "we realized she was becoming more aggressive in her attempts to undermine our authority. and, more worryingly, yours. She has contacts at Morrison and Associates' office and has been colluding with some unscrupulous lawyers to prepare documents that would give her full control of our assets, claiming that you would not be able to manage the inheritance. Charles, our loyal Charles, tried to warn us about the firm's side dealings, but we, naively, thought we could control her. The letter confirmed everything Arthur and Charles had told us, but what came next sent a chill down my spine that nothing before had caused. Most seriously, my daughters, Mom's handwriting seemed to tremble at this point, we discovered that she is involved in something much darker. She has a history of sabotage, and recently, she made veiled threats about eliminating obstacles. Your father and I were investigating, and we found evidence that she was tampering with the brakes of our car. Yes, you read that right. She was trying to kill us. I let out a muffled scream, and Sophie squeezed my hand tightly. The words danced before my eyes, the horrifying truth revealing itself. Our parents had not died in an accident. They had been murdered by Dad's own mother, our Grandma Eleanor. She was testing the limits, Erica, the letter continued, and we were about to confront her with the evidence. But we feared she would act first. That's why we prepared this recorder. It contains a conversation we had with her, where she confesses her intentions. It's our insurance policy, in case something happens to us. The keys are for a safe deposit box at a Boston bank, where we stored copies of all the documents proving her machinations and the car's sabotage. Please, use this to protect yourselves. Trust Charles. He knows more than he can openly say. He is the only one we can trust now that we are no longer here. The letter ended with words of love and a plea for us to live our lives with integrity and courage. I couldn't breathe. The pain of losing our parents transformed into a cold, burning rage. It wasn't just grief, it was murder. And the murderer was the woman sleeping in the next room, the woman who hugged us and feigned concern. Sophie was crying uncontrollably, her face pale and her eyes wide. She killed them, Erica, our own grandmother. I know, Soph, I said, my voice hoarse with emotion. But now we know the truth, and we have the evidence. I picked up the recorder and pressed play. Dad's voice, Richard, filled the room, followed by Mom's, Catherine, and then the cold, calculating voice of Grandma Eleanor. Do you really think you can stop me, Richard? I am your mother. I am entitled to this fortune. And if you don't give me what I want, I will take it from you. And from your daughters, too. They are young and naive. It will be easy to declare them incompetent. Or perhaps I can speed up the process. An accident, perhaps? No one would suspect. Her voice was so calm, so devoid of emotion, that it sent shivers down my spine. Sophie and I hugged each other, trembling. The recording was irrefutable proof, the confession Arthur had mentioned. The hidden box was not just a secret. It was the key to uncovering a heinous crime and protecting our future. Night fell over Martha's Vineyard, but the darkness within us was much deeper. Grandma Eleanor, the woman who had served us cookies and told us bedtime stories, was a murderer. And she was living under the same roof as us, plotting to rob us, and, who knows, silence us forever. The discovery of the box changed everything. We were no longer just victims of grief and manipulation. We were heirs to a dangerous truth, and the responsibility of exposing Grandma Eleanor weighed heavily on our shoulders. We knew that from that moment on, every step would have to be calculated, every word measured. War had been declared, and the next phase would be the most dangerous of all. The revelation of the letter and the recording transformed our pain into a cold fire of determination. We could no longer act like victims. Grandma Eleanor was a murderer, and we were living under the same roof as her. The urgency to act was palpable, but the need for caution was even greater. We need Charles, I told Sophie as we put the box back in its hiding place. Mom said to trust him. He's the only one who can help us get to Boston and the safe deposit box. The problem was how to contact Charles without Grandma Eleanor knowing. She had confiscated our cell phones for our own good, and the house phone line was monitored. However, the mansion in Martha's Vineyard had an old landline in the laundry room, rarely used, which we hoped she had forgotten about. That night, under the pretext of doing laundry, Sophie and I crept to the laundry room. With trembling hands, I dialed Charles's number, which I knew by heart. With each ring, my heart beat faster. What if he had changed his number? What if Grandma Eleanor had silenced him somehow? Hello? Charles's deep voice answered. The relief was immense. Charles, it's me, Erica, I whispered. Sophie and I need your help. It's urgent. He hesitated for a moment. Erica, where are you? Eleanor said you were traveling. We're in Martha's Vineyard, and we found out everything. Our parents left a letter and a recording. Grandma Eleanor, she killed them, Charles. She sabotaged their car. There was a shocked silence on the other end of the line. I knew she was dangerous, but murder? My God. We need to get to Boston. There's a safe deposit box at the bank that has more evidence. Can you help us? Yes, he said, his voice firm. I'll figure it out, but it will be risky. Eleanor has people watching me. I'll need a disguise, and you two will also have to be smart about getting out of there. We agreed on a plan. Charles would meet us in a small, secluded cove about 2 miles from the house the next morning, before dawn. He would bring a boat and take us to the mainland, from where we would go to Boston. The night was long and tense. We slept little, with the recorder and keys hidden under our pillows. With every noise, every shadow, we thought Grandma Eleanor had discovered our plan. At dawn, before the sun painted the sky pink, we dressed in dark clothes and sneaked out of the house. Grandma Eleanor was still sleeping, or so we hoped. Every step on the old wooden floor was a test of our nerves. As we exited the back door, the fresh morning air hit us, a reminder of the freedom we were seeking. The walk to the cove was arduous, but adrenaline propelled us. When we arrived, the silhouette of a small fishing boat was anchored, and Charles was there, waving to us. He was disguised with a fisherman's hat and dark glasses. Get in, quickly, he whispered, helping us onto the boat. The boat trip was silent, with the sound of the waves and the boat's engine being our only companions. I looked back at the summer house that seemed so innocent from a distance, but which held dark secrets. Grandma Eleanor, with her facade of a loving grandmother, was a predator. We reached the mainland, and Charles drove us to a rented car he had parked in a discreet location. Eleanor has informants everywhere, he explained. We need to be invisible. On the way to Boston, Charles told us more about Morrison and Associates' side dealings. They are a network of corrupt lawyers, Erica. They help wealthy people manipulate inheritances, get rid of inconvenient family members. Eleanor has been one of their biggest clients for years. She's tried everything to get your parents out of control of the businesses. With each revelation, Grandma Eleanor's image became more monstrous. She wasn't just a greedy woman. She was a calculating criminal with dangerous connections. We arrived in Boston and went straight to the bank. With the keys Mom had left, we opened the safe deposit box. Inside, we found a stack of documents. Bank statements showing large payments from Grandma Eleanor to Morrison and Associates, detailed reports on the sabotage of our parents' car, and a certified copy of the recording we had. There was also a letter from our parents to the Boston police chief, detailing their suspicions and requesting an investigation if anything happened to them. This is all we need, Sophie said, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and anger. There's no way she can deny this. But Grandma Eleanor was not one to give up easily. While we were at the bank, my cell phone, which I had secretly managed to turn on, rang. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. Erica, my dear. Grandma Eleanor's voice purred from the other end, calm and cold. Did you really think you could fool me? I know where you are, I know what you took, and I know you're with Charles. You've made a big mistake. My blood ran cold. How did she know? Did she have spies in Boston, or had she tracked Charles? I don't know what you're talking about, Grandma, I said, trying to sound nonchalant, but my voice trembled. Don't be naive, my dear. I've always been one step ahead, and now you will regret defying me. I will ensure that you not only lose the inheritance, but that you spend the rest of your lives in an institution deemed insane. And Charles, he will disappear. Forever. The call was cut off. Sophie and I exchanged glances, panic evident on our faces. Grandma Eleanor wasn't bluffing. She was dangerous and willing to go to any lengths. She knows Charles, I said, showing him the phone. She tracked us. Charles clenched his teeth. I knew she was smart, but I didn't expect her to be so fast. We need to act now, before she catches us. Grandma Eleanor had escalated the war. It was no longer just about the inheritance. It was about our lives. We had the evidence, but she had the power and the cruelty. The next stage would be the final confrontation, and we knew it would be the most dangerous of all. The city of Boston, which should have been our salvation, now seemed like a chessboard where Grandma Eleanor controlled the pieces. We had to be faster, smarter, and above all, braver than ever. Grandma Eleanor's threat echoed in our ears, but our anger and determination outweighed the fear. We had irrefutable proof, and now was the time to use it. Charles, with his experience and loyalty, helped us devise a plan. We couldn't go directly to the police. Grandma Eleanor's influence and that of Morrison and Associates were vast, and we feared the evidence might be suppressed or discredited. We need a public stage, Charles said, as we headed to a discreet hotel in Boston. A place where she can't control the narrative. A courtroom is ideal. The problem was that the next probate hearing was scheduled for a week later, and Grandma Eleanor had already requested a court order to subject us to a full psychiatric evaluation based on Dr. Evans's false reports. It was her move to disqualify us before we could even present our defense. We'll use her hearing against her, I said. We'll show up with all the evidence. Charles contacted a trusted lawyer, an old colleague he knew to be upright and who had distanced himself from Morrison and Associates due to disagreements with their practices. Dr. Robert Miller was a middle-aged man with a serious demeanor and an impeccable reputation. He listened to our story with a grave expression, examining the evidence we had collected. "This is explosive, girls," he said, after hearing the recording and reviewing the documents from the safe deposit box. "If this is true, your grandmother is not just a swindler, but a murderer, and Morrison and Associates is involved in a criminal conspiracy." Dr. Miller advised us to keep our presence in Boston a secret until the day of the hearing. Grandma Eleanor was looking for us, and every day we spent without being found was another day to prepare our defense. He instructed us not to make contact with anyone, not even close friends, to avoid leaks. The week passed in agonizing tension. Sophie and I spent hours reviewing documents, memorizing dates and names, preparing for the battle ahead. With each moment, the image of our parents, their smiles, their voices, spurred us on. It wasn't just for us. It was for them, to get justice. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed, with the press present due to the Hayes family's notoriety and public interest in the probate case. Grandma Eleanor was there, seated at the prosecution table with Ms. Davies and Dr. Albright. She looked confident, almost victorious, as if she had already secured our defeat. When we entered the room with Dr. Miller and Charles, who had disguised himself again, the murmur in the room grew louder. Grandma Eleanor saw us, and her smile froze, replaced by an expression of shock and contained fury. The hearing began with Ms. Davies presenting the false psychiatric reports and employee statements, painting a picture of two disoriented and incapable young heiresses. Dr. Albright testified, stating that our memory lapses and episodes of confusion indicated an urgent need for guardianship. Grandma Eleanor, with her melodious voice full of false sorrow, testified about her deep concern for our mental health, claiming she was only trying to protect us. When it was our turn, Dr. Miller called us to the witness stand. I went first, followed by Sophie. With each question, I felt Grandma Eleanor's piercing gaze, trying to intimidate me. But the anger at the betrayal and the memory of Mom's letter gave me strength. "Ms. Hayes," Dr. Miller began. "Mrs. Eleanor and her lawyers claim that you and your sister are not in a condition to manage your parents' inheritance. What do you have to say about that?" "I say it's a lie, Your Honor," I responded, my voice firm and clear. "My grandmother is trying to steal from us, and she's using despicable tactics to do it." The murmur in the room grew louder. Ms. Davies stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is making defamatory statements without proof." "Sustained," the judge said. "Ms. Hayes, stick to the facts." "The facts are, Your Honor," I continued, that my grandmother, Eleanor Hayes, is involved in a conspiracy to declare us mentally incompetent, and she has the help of Morrison and Associates and Dr. Albright. Dr. Miller then requested permission to present evidence. He placed the small digital recorder on the courtroom sound system. Dad's voice, Richard, filled the room, followed by Mom's, Catherine. And then, Grandma Eleanor's cold, calculating voice, confessing her intentions to sabotage our parents' car and declare us incompetent. The room fell silent. Grandma Eleanor's face paled, and she looked at Ms. Davies with panic in her eyes. Dr. Albright looked shocked. "Your Honor," Dr. Miller said, "we also have bank statements showing large payments from Mrs. Eleanor to Morrison and Associates, detailed reports on the sabotage of our parents' car, and a letter from our parents to the Boston police chief, detailing their suspicions." He presented the documents, which were distributed to the judge and the opposing counsel. Ms. Davies tried to argue that the recording was forged, that the documents were fake. But Dr. Miller had all the answers, all the authenticated proofs. He called Charles Ramson, who testified about Grandma Eleanor's history, her side dealings with Morrison and Associates, and previous sabotage attempts. Charles, with his serious demeanor and detailed testimony, was a powerful witness. Grandma Eleanor, seeing her plan crumble, tried to maintain her composure, but her mask of benevolence finally broke. She began to scream, to deny everything, to accuse us of being liars. "They're crazy! They're making it all up! They should be in an asylum!" Her outburst of rage, her true face exposed, was the final proof of her instability and cruelty. The judge, with a stern expression, brought down his gavel. "Given the evidence presented," he declared, "this court immediately revokes Mrs. Eleanor Hayes' guardianship request. Furthermore, due to the gravity of the accusations of murder and conspiracy, I order the immediate arrest of Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, Ms. Davies, Dr. Albright, and anyone else involved with Morrison and Associates for investigation." The room erupted in murmurs. Police officers entered the room and handcuffed Grandma Eleanor, who continued to scream and curse at us. Ms. Davies and Dr. Albright were also taken away. The shock was immense, but the feeling of relief that washed over us was even greater. Justice was being served. Sophie and I embraced, tears streaming down our faces. But this time, they were tears of relief and gratitude. The battle had been won. Grandma Eleanor had fallen, and the truth had prevailed. But the journey was not yet over. Her downfall was just the beginning of a new phase, a phase of healing and reconstruction. The downfall of Grandma Eleanor and her accomplices reverberated across the country. The news was filled with the story of the respected matriarch who, in reality, was a murderer and a swindler. Morrison and Associates was dismantled, its corrupt lawyers arrested, and its side dealings exposed. Dr. Albright, the psychiatrist who tried to discredit us, had his license revoked and faced criminal charges. Justice, though delayed, was relentless. For Sophie and me, the relief was immense, but healing took time. The mansion in Fairview, which once seemed haunted by Grandma Eleanor's presence, began to transform back into a home. Charles Ramson, our silent hero, was reinstated with an even higher position of trust, becoming a paternal figure and an advisor to us. He helped us reorganize the household staff, ensuring that all who had been complicit with Grandma Eleanor were replaced by loyal and ethical people. The following months were dedicated to honoring our parents' memory and rebuilding our lives. The inheritance, which once seemed a heavy burden and a source of danger, now became a tool for good. We decided to invest in causes our parents loved, especially in education and support programs for vulnerable youth. "Mom and Dad would be proud, Erica," Sophie said one day, as we visited a community center we had helped fund. "We're using what they built to make a difference." "I know, Soph," I replied, feeling a warmth in my chest. "They taught us to be strong and to fight for what's right, and that's what we're doing." Our relationship with Dr. Robert Miller, the lawyer who defended us, evolved into a friendship of mutual respect. He helped us establish a foundation in our parents' name, dedicated to combating the financial exploitation of the elderly and young, a direct legacy of our own experience. Grandma Eleanor was sentenced to life in prison. We never saw her again. The idea that she, our own grandmother, could have committed such a heinous crime was still difficult to process, but time and distance brought a form of peace. It wasn't forgiveness, but rather the acceptance that we couldn't let her hatred consume our lives. One day, Charles surprised us. "Girls," he said with a rare, gentle smile, "Arthur Jenkins contacted me. He's in a difficult situation, but he was crucial for you. I think he deserves a chance." We agreed immediately. We found Arthur, who was living in precarious conditions. We offered him a job at our foundation, using his paralegal experience to help investigate cases of exploitation. Arthur moved, accepted. He became a valuable member of our team, a constant reminder that kindness can come from the most unexpected places. Life began to flourish again. Sophie and I, now 20 years old, decided to go to college, studying law and business administration, respectively, so we could manage our parents' empire with wisdom and ethics. Our friends, who had drifted away, returned, and we explained to them what we had been through. They gave us the support and understanding we so desperately needed. The mansion, once a place of mourning and fear, was now filled with laughter and hope. We hosted dinners, welcomed friends, and even began planning a garden in honor of our parents, a place of beauty and tranquility. One evening, sitting on the porch, watching the sunset over the ocean, Sophie and I embraced. "I never thought we'd get to this point, Erica," she whispered. "I thought we'd lose everything." "Me too, Soph," I replied. "But we fought, and we won. And most importantly, we found ourselves. We found our strength, our voice. The journey had been long and painful, but it transformed us. We were no longer the naive 19-year-old girls who walked into that parking lot. We were strong, resilient women who had faced darkness and emerged with the light of truth. Our parents' inheritance wasn't just money. It was the responsibility to live with purpose, to make a difference, and to never allow evil to prevail. Richard and Catherine Hayes's legacy lived on in us, in every decision we made, in every act of kindness we performed. Grandma Eleanor had failed in her attempt to destroy us, not only because Arthur warned us, but because the foundation of love and values our parents built was stronger than her lies and cruelty. We were young, yes, but we were just beginning the best chapter of our lives. The feeling of freedom was indescribable, and the peace we felt was a treasure no fortune could buy. Whew, what a journey, wasn't it? Telling you this story was like reliving every moment, every fear, every victory. I hope you felt every emotion, every twist and turn, as if you were there with us. If this story touched you in any way, if it made you think about the strength of family, the importance of truth, or the resilience of the human spirit, I would be very happy if you subscribed here and left a comment. Tell me, have you ever been through something similar? Or perhaps you have a story of overcoming challenges that you'd like to share. I'd love to hear it. And if you have ideas for themes for future stories, let me know. My gratitude for being able to share this with you is immense. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end.